end, I had a one-on-one sit-down conversation with a young woman by the name of Amara Wogu. She was formerly an employee at one of Canada's biggest banks, and she told me about her story and her experience. She has also shared it on social media, and her experience, in her own words, based on what she told me and shared, is that it was something that broke her spirit. Have a listen.
I was faced with the reality that I just didn't belong. I was othered immediately just by the sense of I was the only Black person on the team, on our brand marketing team. I was called another woman's name who didn't even work at RBC. She just so happens to be Black, and she also worked on our account. I've been on set where people have made fun of, musicians who happen to be Black women, their hair, how big it is, how curly it is, and have just had to be kind of quiet in that sense because I didn't want to make a scene and I didn't want to be labeled as a, disturber or complainer or not a team player. The second experience that I had while working on the job was when Black Panther came out. And basically, my manager had asked me, how I felt about the film, and I basically went to go on to tell him about how all of the cultural traditional wear that the actors were wearing in a certain scene were actually from Africa, and people actually did their research, which often doesn't happen in films. And it was just a really great moment to see. And then that's when he told me that, oh, you must have a personal connection to it. That's why you have a personal connection to it. That's why you liked it. And Wakanda's not a real place. I am Nigerian, but Wakanda's not real. For everybody knew that Black Panther was a big deal. It was culturally relevant in the world that we're in. It just seems so insane that I had to explain that to somebody.
And there are people who are going to hear this and say, maybe these were things that were insensitive, but not necessarily racist, or who may dismiss this and say, you're a troublemaker, or you're making too big a deal out of small things. What do you say to that?
I say I may be the one that's speaking up now and today about it, but you can ask any Black professional who works in corporate Canada. Racial insensitivities take a toll on a person's well-being, how they see themselves, how they react to things, because in a sense, you're gaslit because you're told that, oh, it's not that serious, right? But it really is, because at the end of the day, you feel inadequate. You feel like you don't belong. And, personally, when I was thinking about, okay, I obviously clearly need to go find another job, but I was quick to realize that things weren't going to change for me if I went somewhere else, because I was still always going to be the minority. So, I actually haven't heard a lot of people say that, this is just insensitive and not racist. People have been sharing their own experiences with me as well, which is something that I didn't expect. So to the people who just say that it's insensitive and not racist, I just, quite frankly, just don't agree.
Now, BNN Bloomberg reached out to RBC, and spokesperson Jillian McCardle got back to us. She said, this is their statement, "It is never appropriate in any context for someone to encounter racist behavior in the workplace. We take our responsibilities as an employer very seriously. We're saddened and deeply concerned that anyone would feel disrespected at our company." She also went on to highlight the bank's July 6th statement. And in it acknowledges systemic racism disproportionately affecting, disadvantaging people of color, Indigenous people. What do you say to that?
I say that RBC should probably look inwards. I think it starts with your own backyard first and your employees, and looking and doing an audit of all the HR complaints that you've gotten from employees in your own organization. Because at the end of the day, people have to work 8 hours a day. And if they're being belittled and dehumanized in very indirect ways that might not be offensive right off the bat, but they are in these forms of microaggressions, you're not going to get the best work out of your talent. You're not going to have employees that want to show up every day. You're not going to have employees that are doing their jobs with purpose.
I spoke with Laura Williams, who is an HR and legal expert. She wouldn't comment specifically on your situation, but she does say, broadly speaking, that there is a disconnect between what we have is kind of this unprecedented amount of companies, corporate Canada, coming out and saying we want to do better. But when you look kind of under the hood, they don't have the internal mechanisms in place, whether that is workplace policies or even from the legal standpoint, to deal effectively with microaggressions. What do you think of that?
You're going to find that people who have more emotional intelligence in these cases can quickly identify what's offensive and what's not. And I think when it comes to navigating, employees and not having enough insight into microaggressions, I think that starts with hiring policies, D&I, and just like the actual education. Because personally, when I started at RBC, I had to do a bunch of anti-money laundering tests, like ethics and whatnot, and tests, and there wasn't anything on cultural sensitivity. That was only brought up when I actually reported the incidents, and it was kind of like a punishment for my manager. It was to go to cultural sensitivity training. But all employees, right when they get hired, should be doing quarterly intakes and updating their knowledge of cultural sensitivity, just like the banks do with everything else.
Now, you left your position at the bank in April, in the midst of the pandemic. I have to ask, why are you sharing your story now? Why are you going public now?
Because of what happened to George Floyd. Personally, when I watched that video on my phone of a man's life being taken from him, it brought back all the memories and everything that I was trying to move forward from. And I know a lot of my own colleagues and friends were hugely affected and expected to, go to work, and were expected to, act normal. But what I realized, what that moment did, was made it safe for Black people and Black employees to speak up and have their concerns actually be heard for the first time, or actually in a real way, because you couldn't deny what's happening in the world anymore after George.